I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. This was futile. I tried for years. There will be an outcry. There will be an investigation. Years will pass. There will be some sort of insight committee. There will be rulemaking. Then there will be oversight, eventually regulations. This all takes many years. This is the normal course of things. If you look at, say, AI is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization. In a way that car accidents, airplane crashes, faulty drugs, or bad food were not. They were not. They were harmful to a set of individuals within society, of course, but they were not harmful to society as a whole. AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization. I think there's a role for regulators. That's very important. And I'm against overregulation for sure. But man, I think we better get on that with AI Fronto. So there'll certainly be a lot of job disruption. Because what's going to happen is robots will be able to do everything better than us. I'm including, all of us. This is really like the scariest problem to me, I'll tell you. So I really think we need government regulation here, because this is, ensuring the public good is served. Because you've got companies that are racing, that they kind of have to race to build AI, or they're going to be made uncompetitive. Essentially, if your competitor is racing to build AI and you don't, they will crush you. There's something like 12% of jobs are transport. Transport will be one of the first things to go fully autonomous. But when I say everything, the robots will be able to do everything, bar nothing. One of the roles of government is to ensure the public good, and that dangers to the public are addressed. So hence the regulatory thing. I think the first order of business would be to try to learn as much as possible. To understand the nature of the issues, to look closely at the progress that is being made, and the remarkable achievements of artificial intelligence. Last year, Go, which is quite a difficult game to beat, that people thought would never be beaten with by a computer. That a computer would either never beat the best human player, or that it was 20 years away. And last year, AlphaGo, which was done by DeepMind, which is a kind of a Google subsidiary, absolutely crushed the world's best player. And now it can play the top 50 simultaneously and crush them all. So, just that pace of progress is remarkable. And you can see more and more coming out. I think the robotics. You can see robots that can learn to walk from nothing. Within hours, way faster than any biological being. But the thing that's most dangerous is, and it's the hardest to kind of wrap, kind of get your arms around, because it's not a physical thing, is kind of a deep intelligence in the network. You say, well, what harm could a deep intelligence in the network do? So, well, it could start a war. By doing fake news and spoofing email accounts and fake press releases, and just by manipulating information. The pen is mightier than the sword. Let's say if you had an AI that was where the AI's goal was to maximize the value of a portfolio of stocks. One of the ways to maximize value would be to go long on defense, short on consumer, start a war. And then how could it do that? Well, hacked into the Malaysian Airlines aircraft routing server, route it over a war zone, then send an anonymous tip that an enemy aircraft is flying overhead right now. Well, I think the first order of business would be to gain insight. Right now, the government does not even have insight. And I think the right order of business would be to stand up a regulatory agency, initial goal, gain insight into the status of AI activity, make sure the situation is understood. Once it is, then put regulations in place to ensure public safety. It won't, because has Boeing moved to China? Nope, they're pulling aircraft here. Same on cars, and so it's the notion that if you establish a regulatory regime, that companies will simply move to countries with lower regulatory requirements is false on the face of it, because none of them do. Once there is awareness, people will be extremely afraid, as they should be.
This tends to plague smart people. They just can't. They define themselves by their intelligence, and they don't like the idea that a machine could be way smarter than them. So they discount the idea, which is fundamentally flawed. That's the wishful thinking situation. I'm really quite close to. I'm very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows, and the rate of improvement is exponential. I'm not normally an advocate of regulation and oversight. I mean, I think one should generally err on the side of minimizing those things, but this is a case where you have a very serious danger to the public, and so therefore there needs to be a public body that has insight and then oversight on to confirm that everyone is developing AI safely. This is extremely important. I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. That would be insane. And mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. Far. So why do we have no regulatory oversight? This is insane. If humanity collectively decides that creating digital superintelligence is the right move, then we should do so very, very carefully. Very, very carefully. This is the most important thing that we could possibly do. And anyone who, for the early people that go to Mars, it'll be far more dangerous. I mean, really, it kind of reads like Shackleton's ad for Antarctic explorers. It's like difficult, dangerous, good chance you'll die. Excitement for those who survive. That kind of thing. A BFR flight will actually cost less than our Falcon 1 flight did back in the day. So that was about a $5 or $6 million marginal cost per flight. We're confident that BFR will be less than that. So that's profound, and that is what will enable the creation of a permanent base on the moon and a city on Mars. And that's the equivalent of like the Union Pacific Railroad, or having ships that can cross the oceans. Until you can get there, there's no way for all of the entrepreneurial energy to you can't do anything. There's no way for all the flowers to bloom. Once you can get there, the opportunity is immense.
Because
in fact, it got to the point where basically every conversation was the AI/simulation conversation, and my brother and I finally agreed that we would ban such conversations if we were ever in a hot tub. Okay. That was like Because that really
We're
kills
not
the
in a hot
magic.
tub, so the idea is right. Any sufficiently advanced civilization could create a simulation that's like our existence, and so the theory follows that maybe we're in the simulation. Have you thought about this? And
A lot.
are we? Are we?
Even in hot
I
tubs.
need to know.
So
Are
much
we
so
in
it
the
had to be banned from a hot tub.
Okay.
It's not the sexiest conversation.
Are we in? Are we in?
I mean, I think here's, in my mind, like the strongest argument for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following. That 40 years ago, we had Pong, like 2 rectangles and a dot. That
Right.
was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. And soon we'll have virtual reality, augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality, just indistinguishable. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be, billions of such, computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
So
Tell me what's wrong with that argument.
Is the answer yes?
The argument is probably. I mean, but I just like, is there a flaw in that argument?
I mean, someone.
I'm not sure what the error.
No. The argument makes sense. So the assumption then is that somebody beat us to it, and this is a game.
No. There's a 1 in billions chance that this is base reality.
Oh, okay. What do you think?
Well, I think it's 1 in billions.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean, that seems to be like clearly what it suggests.
Right.
And actually, I mean, arguably, we should hope that that's true, because otherwise, if civilization stops advancing, then that may be due to some calamitous event that erases civilization. So maybe we should be hopeful that this is a simulation, because otherwise.
So they could reboot it.
Well, otherwise, either we're going to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality, or civilization will cease to exist. Those are the 2 options.
So what is life for you? Is it a dream? Is it
Is life a
real?
dream?
Is it a million D? What is life for Elon Musk?
I find as I get older, I find that question to be maybe more and more confusing or troubling or uncertain. I think particularly when you see the advancement of something like video games, like say 40 years ago, you had video games, the most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like 2 rectangles and a dot. You're like batting it back and forth.
I played it.
Oh yeah, like me too, exactly. I played
all.
Pong. Exactly, it sort of dates you a little bit. But yeah, we both played the same game. And that was like, wow, that was a pretty fun game at the time. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic, and millions of people playing simultaneously. And you see where things are going with virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you extrapolate that out into the future with any rate of progress at all, like even 0.1% or something like that a year, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. And then it seems like, well, how do we know that that didn't happen in the past and that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
Interesting.
I mean, Could be.
Everything is possible in life.
I mean, particularly like things seem to be accelerating to something. Well, do I think that there's some sort of master intelligence architecting all of this stuff? I think probably not, because then you have to say, where did the master intelligence come from? So it sort of begs the question of, So I think really you can explain this with the fundamental laws of physics. It's a complex phenomenon from simple elements.
So what is life for you? Is it a dream? Is it
Is life a
real?
dream?
Is it a million D? What is life for Elon Musk?
I find as I get older, I find that question to be maybe more and more confusing or troubling or uncertain. I think particularly when you see the advancement of something like video games, like say 40 years ago, you had video games. The most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like two rectangles and a dot, and you're like batting it back and forth.
I played it.
Oh yeah, like me too, exactly. I
That's
played Pong. Exactly, it sort of dates you a little bit, but yeah, we both played the same game, and that was like, wow, that was a pretty fun game at the time. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic, and millions of people playing simultaneously, and you see where things are going with virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you extrapolate that out into the future with any rate of progress at all, like even 0.1% or something like that a year, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. And then it seems like, well, how do we know that that didn't happen in the past and that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
Interesting.
I mean, could be.
Everything is possible in life.
I mean, particularly like things seem to be accelerating to something.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Manu. I'm a sophomore at Stanford, and all of your work has been bringing people from place A to B in the fastest and the most environmentally friendly manner. There's also another kind of research happening in the valley where people are trying to avoid transportation at all. We call it virtual reality, right? So I can be in my dorm and I can see you speaking with the same level of contact on my Oculus Rift as I am here right now taking the Caltrain or the Tesla or even a SpaceX rocket in the future. How do you think will virtual reality tie in the future of transportation which you are working on? Thank you.
Well, maybe we're in a simulation right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Sometimes it feels like that. I think it is going to, from what I've heard of Oculus Rift and some of the other immersive technologies, that it's quite transformative. You really feel like you're there. And then when you come out of it, it feels like reality isn't real. So I think we'll see probably less physical movement in the future as a result of the virtual reality stuff. Yeah.
And when we come out of what we're here now into this virtual reality, we'll think it's real. I mean, it's like we're...
Well, I mean, there's some interesting things here on the virtual reality front. Just on the whole notion of a simulation, which is that if you extrapolate into the future and say, well, how good, let's say, will video games be in 100 or 200 or 1,000 years from now? If there's continued improvement and you're in a full body haptic suit with a sort of surround vision and it becomes, beyond a certain resolution, indistinguishable from reality. And there are likely to be millions, maybe billions of such simulations. So So then what are the odds that we're actually in base reality? Isn't it 1 in billions?
Is it? I mean, I can give the counter
Seems to
argument,
be.
but I'd rather you give the counter argument.
Obviously this feels real, but it seems unlikely to be real.